Hello, everyone. My name is Rebecca Morton. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the artist and studio manager here at Baltimore Clayworks. We are thrilled that you all have joined us. I would like to acknowledge that I'm joining from my office located on Piscataway and Susquehannock lands, currently known as Baltimore, Maryland. It is my pleasure to welcome you to our virtual artist talk given today by Meghan Yarnell. Meghan grew up in Northwest Ohio. Many of her happiest childhood memories include the time she spent exploring the field, creek, and woods behind her home. She graduated from Bowling Green State University in 2005 with a degree in 3D studies and has been teaching art in the public school system ever since. She is currently working as a high school ceramics teacher in Perrysburg, Ohio, where she maintains a home studio alongside her husband and 3 children. For more information about our artist talks, please visit our virtual library at baltimoreclayworks.org and tune in next week on Tuesday, November 19th for an artist talk with Hiro Hanazono from 1:30 to 2. I will now turn it over to Meghan.
All right. Hi, everyone. I am Meghan Yarnell. In the left corner, that is a photo of me dressed up like an art teacher for Halloween when I was 9 years old. I have known that I've wanted to do something with art for a really long time. I was really lucky because I grew up in a family that valued the arts, and I grew up going to art shows, the art museum, different like music, theater, all sorts of things. My parents were really encouraging with my love of art, and I really can't remember a time that art wasn't a big part of my life. In the right corner, that is my family. I live in a suburb of Toledo, Ohio called Perrysburg with my husband and our 3 children. My son Asher is 11, my daughter Lucy is 9, and my daughter Bayla is 6. And we have a pet axolotl, which is an amphibian. Their name is Heather, and that is a picture of Heather in the middle right there. If you're considering a pet axolotl, I would recommend that you do your research because I did not, and they are really not a super easy pet. But we've had Heather for about a year now, and Heather is thriving, I hope. So I grew up in Toledo. I moved to Perrysburg when I was in second grade. And I was really lucky because right where we lived, there was a huge field, woods, pond, creek, and most of my childhood memories were spent exploring this wild area. And we really just had free reign with the neighborhood kids where we would just pack lunches and be gone for the entire day. That's a picture of my son exploring the same creek that I grew up exploring. So my parents actually still live in the same area. And I've been lucky enough to be able to take my kids back and let them explore some of the wild places that I grew up around too. I really like this quote. Most of the universe is too large or too small for us to appreciate. I feel like it's very applicable because there's so much, and it's so hard to like narrow it down and really like focus on some of the tiny things or the big things. And then I am lucky enough now to live in Perrysburg. My backyard is a giant field, and there's lots of wildlife back there. So you can see, I think that's a woodchuck, some wild turkeys, a coyote, some deer, and then we have a big garden. So we have some raised beds on the side of our house, and I love vegetable gardening. We also have some fruit. I cannot grow a house plant to save my life. I wish that I could be like a better plant parent, but I kill all of them. But I do really like spending time in my garden. My family also really likes to be outside. So we like to travel and we like to explore the area metro parks. Ever ever since my husband and I started dating, we've been traveling and exploring, and we've gotten to go some really cool places. We really enjoy the nature or the national parks. And then we've taken our kids to the metro parks and to a few national parks. We're trying really, really hard to turn them into hikers. 2 out of 3 are tolerating it. The youngest one we're still working on. But we recently this summer we were in Mount Rainier National Park, and we were on the Oregon coast, and in the top almost right corner you can see us in front of Mount Rainier. And so we're working on them, trying to get them to love the outdoors as much as we do. So we try and spend as much time outside as we can. So I graduated from Bowling Green State University in Bowling Green, Ohio in 2005. The photo on the left is a photo of my sister and I, and she would be mortified if she knew that I included that photo because that was her emo phase. But I can't crop her out because then you can't see my pottery. So that was my BFA show. And then after I graduated, I started teaching in a public school, and I just kind of tried to make work when I could. And I worked out of my apartment at the time. I was invited back to BGSU in 2010 as part of a show called 100 at 100. It was their 100th anniversary. And so pictured below is the set that I had in that show. And it is a picture with lots of pills, pill sprigs and pill stamps. And then all of the tumblers say things like RX happier, RX skinnier, RX healthier. So I was doing a lot of stuff around that time that was more of like a social commentary. And then in 2011, I was part of a few local shows. Again, more of like the social commentary work. The bottom, it are some mugs that say happy, and they just have things that like people use to like make themselves, I don't know, kind of like artificially happy, I guess, like love, money, food, fashion. And then in the top, I had some stressful teacups. So like, tea is supposed to be like a relaxing ritual, but these had things on them like, rich money, and then the saucer had like bills on it, or like the saucer in the middle has like a bikini on it, and then donuts on the saucer. And then just some mugs on the bottom that had different things with money on them. They say upgrade and brand name. So that's I was doing it still like a lot of surface decoration, but just more like social commentary. And then in 2011, I melted my kiln so badly. I was so excited because I bought a brand new kiln. And the very first time I fired it, it had a kiln sitter in it. If you're familiar with the kiln sitter, it uses a pyrometric cone, and the cone melts at a certain temperature, and then the kiln turns off. And for some reason, this malfunctioned the very first time I fired it. And instead of turning off, it just melted itself. And the worst thing is that I was sitting down there the whole time just wondering, like, why is this taking so long? And lesson learned, I have an external pyrometer now, and I can monitor the temperature, without the kiln, but I also have a computerized kiln now that does not have a kiln sitter. But when I opened the kiln the next morning and saw this, I had a massive panic attack. And I finished up any commitments that I had, and I did not make any work for about 7 years because I, for a long time, could not even look at this photo or think about ceramics without wanting to throw up. So what did I do in the meantime? I took some classes at the Toledo Art Museum in watercolor and pen and ink. And once I could look at the kiln without feeling like I was going to throw up, I felt guilty because I had this kiln, in my house and I wasn't using it. And so I started teaching children's classes out of my basement. And that was really fun for a while because I really have always enjoyed teaching. I like working with kids. So I did this for a while, and probably after about, it took a while, probably after about 6 years, I started to get the itch again to make work. So I started throwing again. And I like that graphic at the top because it says the life of an artist, and it's a triangle, and the work you see is just like the little tiny tip of the top. And then the rest of the work is everything you don't see. And so I think, sometimes even when I think about like where I'm at now, like I'm like, wow, that happened like pretty fast. Like I feel like I grew on social media pretty fast, and I've been offered some amazing opportunities, but man, have I put in so much work behind the scenes that people don't necessarily see. So you can see some of the photos of just like earlier pieces, just lots and lots of pots. My sketchbook, there's a photo of my notes that I was taking at the time. And then all the pots on the floor are just failures that I think I ended up dumpstering. But I made a lot of pots when I was starting to get back into it. And I was just trying to figure out, what direction I wanted to go because I wanted to do something different. I had a lot of ideas, and the technology had like progressed by then, because it had been, 6 or 7 years since I had made pottery. There was a lot more on the scene. So In 2017, I was accepted into my first juried show at Companion Gallery. It was last call, and I still, like, looking back, it makes me want to pinch myself because I can't believe I got in. And I look at those cups right now, and I think they probably shouldn't have gotten in, but someone, whoever was jurying, must have taken pity on me, and they accepted them. And and I was so excited to be in the show because it was like one of my dreams to be, shown a companion gallery. And then also on the right, I was part of something local called Maker's Mart. And that was done by Handmade Toledo. And it was a really, really cool local show with lots of local artists. And so that was my first, like, I guess, debut in a long time. And it went really, really well. So I was super excited. And then you can see this work kind of progressed really quickly where the designs like evolved. Here I was working with the war on drugs. So I was inspired by just the amount of money that the United States has spent fighting the war on drugs. And it seemed to be a losing war. I've had friends that have been affected by the opioid crisis in Ohio, especially. I don't know if you've seen some of the documentaries, but on Netflix and such, but they talk a lot about like Oxycontin and like how, you know, awful it was to working class people. And so these mugs were inspired by that with the opium poppy. And then you can see like the decals on it are the dollar sign. And I was just exploring different ways to incorporate lots of different surface decoration techniques. And hopefully convey this theme like subtly, and not like so like in your face. And so this is how a lot of the work ended up. And I was having fun making it, but I was also starting to get a little bit bored where I felt like I'd pushed it as far as I could push it. And I had a lot of ideas, but they just weren't working, with the clay and with the techniques that I was using. So I don't know, I was starting to get kind of frustrated with it and I just didn't really know the direction that I wanted to go. So in 2023, I was part of the Imposters Cup Show, which is a super fun show that is put on by a few of my friends, and you apply to be in it. And then they take all of the artists that are accepted and they do a blind swap. So every artist is assigned another artist and it's a secret. And you're impostoring their work and you're allowed to add like a little hint of your own work in it. So I was assigned this person, Pouty Pottery, and their cup is in the upper right corner. And then the cups that I impostered are the bottom ones. So I tried to do, the same like face. And then I added, at the time I was doing these like really thick white slip clouds. So I tried to add some of those to the back. And I had a lot of fun doing that. And then I had to buy this clay, right? Because I was using porcelain. So I was thinking like, well, what am I going to do with all this extra clay? And I was kind of feeling kind of bored at the time. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna try a couple things. So I threw a bunch of pots with the extra clay that I had. And those are on the left, the first ones that I did. So I was just doing the same kind of decoration techniques that I was doing with the porcelain, doing the stencils and doing the carving. But I didn't really like the way the carving looked on the dark clay. It just, I felt like when I was doing the carving before, it was to inlay, darker colors, but because the clay was already dark, I didn't really need to do the carving. So then I thought, well, what if I do different kinds of stencils? So I had bought an iPad about a year before, and I was trying to learn Procreate, which I don't know if you've tried Procreate, but it's a program, it's an app on an iPad, and it is really, you can do some really amazing things with it, but it was a learning curve. And the best way to describe it is it makes my brain feel kind of itchy because I feel like I draw the same line like 50 times and I'm still not happy with it. But I really like the end result. So I started to draw these more complicated stencils, and working with the dark clay has been a huge challenge. I thought porcelain was fussy to work with, but the dark clay has completely different challenges where it reacts weirdly with glaze and it's finicky when you fire it. So my first like few attempts with this new technique did not go very well. I had a lot of really awful glaze flaws, still having some glaze flaws. But I was like, okay, I kind of like this new direction. I want to keep pursuing it. So in the upper left-hand corner is one of the first poppy mugs that I made with the new darker clay, and I was still doing some carving and inlay on that one. And then you can see the one on the right is one that is more recent. So I feel like my stencil designs have gotten a lot stronger, and I'm not doing any carving, but I like the way like the clay still shows through in the negative space. And then this is what a lot of my work looks like now. So I've got a lot of different designs. I've been working really hard on my drawings and my stencils and trying to create more depth and more like complicated designs, and still working with like natural themes, really just inspired by nature and human interaction with nature, and just like the quirk. I like the quirky, like the weird plants, like the pitcher plant. And I don't know, I grew up, playing with like the helicopter seed pods, the maple seed pods, and throwing them in the air and watching them spiral down. And just, from my travels, seeing like cool things like saguaro cactus and um yeah, so I like the weird things in nature and the beautiful things, and that's where I get a lot of my inspiration from, just spending time in the natural world, and yeah, and trying to spend time and procreate and work on my drawings and make them better. So this is a recent design where I'm working with different types of cacti. I always feel pretentious saying cacti, but cactuses sounds weird too. So got the prickly pear, the barrel cactus, and the saguaro. And I like to decorate all the surfaces. I'm a more is more person. So I've got the bottom and like everywhere, the handle. I try and do decoration on everything. And so then this is me in my studio. I throw all my pots on the wheel. It's not my favorite part of the process, but I do like throwing. I don't do any sort of altering on the wheel. So I would say like my throwing skills are like average at best. I'm not doing anything fancy, just throwing pretty basic forms. Because of the stencils, they don't really adhere well to like round pieces. So I try and do pretty like straight up and down forms. And then the photo in the middle shows the drawing on Procreate. And then it shows the stencil, which is in the bottom right. And then it shows the mug. So everything starts with a drawing on Procreate. And then I use the Cricut to cut the stencil out of vinyl. I do all my decoration on leather hard pots. So that's me on the right, decorating with the glaze. And I use a combination of Mako stroke and coat glazes, which are shiny, and I use the Amico velvets, which are matte. So I like the way the matte and the shiny kind of like contrast each other. And then I just have like a bunch of different stencils that I use in combination to like decorate the whole piece. And this is my studio. So I work out of my basement. Really lucky to have this awesome space. My husband is very handy, and he did all the wiring for the kiln for me and the plumbing. I have a sink, which is amazing. And he is very good with electrical and plumbing things. I am not. I can do basic kiln maintenance and repair because I feel like it's my equipment, so I should know how to use it, but he can do it 10 times faster than me. So usually when we change the elements, he just does it. But I can do it. I can. And I have done it. But he's just a lot better at it than me. And so that's my studio. I've got a pug mill. I've got a Brent Model B wheel that I've had since graduating from college that is in great condition still. I've never done anything with it. I have two kilns. I've got a 7 cubic foot L&L, and then I've got a smaller test kiln. Got those big wire racks that I store things on. I have two damp boxes that are like lifesavers to me. I don't always get as much time to work in my studio as I want because I work full time and I have 3 kids. So the damp boxes keep things at like the right working consistency. So they are amazing. The pug mill is also, I love my pug mill, and it's not essential, but it just saves a lot of energy for me. Especially when I was working with the porcelain and having to like, reclaim and wedge things. So that is my studio. It's about 100 square feet. So it's not very big. I do have like a little photo box set up. My wish list would be a better place to take photographs and like a better place to pack orders because I'm kind of doing it in my children's playroom right now and it's just a big mess. One of the most common questions I get asked is how I find time to make work because I do work full time and I have 3 kids. And the answer is in 5, 10, 15, 20-minute increments sometimes. Now that they're getting a little bit older, the youngest is 6, it's a little bit easier to get work done. But these are photos of them growing up with me in my studio. And you can see the little boy in the upper corner is 11 now. So he's a tween and he wants nothing to do with my studio and wants everything to do with sports. And he wants me to make him food. So as soon as I get home from work, he asks me what's for dinner. Um, but he's not super interested in spending time in the studio with me anymore. But he did spend a lot of time down there in his early years. You can see he's got some Play-Doh, and I think there was moon sand. There is also a potty in the upper right corner because I was potty training one of my children at the time. So all of them have spent a considerable amount of time in the studio with me. And the youngest is still down there with me quite a bit. I always refer to her as my like studio assistant because she doesn't actually do any assisting. I wish she did. It'd be a lot cooler if she did. But mostly she just asked me about 1,000 questions. And she can tell you what every piece of equipment does and how to use it. She's very interested in it. My middle child really does like to use the clay, so I made her a little studio set up around the corner from mine so she can make her own, creations. So bringing my children into my studio, while it's not my first choice, it is one of the only ways I was able to get work done when they were a little bit younger, and even now, they're still down there with me and welcome to be down there with me so I can get work done here and there. And just a few things I have coming up. I am part of Winterfest at Baltimore Clayworks. So I have I think 14-ish pieces left that are still for sale. That's a photo of me now. One of my former students took these awesome photos of me. And then a few things that I have coming up. I'm part of the Pot Stars pop-up at Ensika in March with a few of my friends. We have rented out a local brewery and we will have our work there in Salt Lake City in March. I'm going to be teaching a few online workshops with the Potters class, which is Paul Blaze's online class, and then Sipora also, and those are going to be in January and February. So the best way to contact me would be I have an Instagram that I'm most active on Instagram. I do have a Facebook as well, but I'm much more active on Instagram. That is my email address. I do have a newsletter that you can sign up for. I usually only send it out once a month or less, but definitely Instagram is the place that I am most active. So that is all I have if you want to open it up for questions.